Now let me show you a real world example of where Query Sleuth became very, very useful to me and why I actually built it in the first place. Now what I'm showing you on screen right now here is a view of a particular model that I built for a client. As you can see here in the Power Query Dependencies view, this looks pretty much like a bowl of spaghetti. Now the client I worked with at the time tended to change scope on things, so we really had to put a big focus on tracing the lineage of where our Power Queries went to know when we changed to base level 1, what would actually happen further on down the chain. To be fair, this tool didn't even exist at the time. It wasn't in Power Query, but even when we got it, if you select this particular node, you'll notice it highlights almost everything in the model. You try to pull one of the nodes out, it just moves the entire thing. So once you start getting into complex models, this tool that they gave us for tracing dependencies really wasn't very effective. So I'm just going to close this and go back to Excel. And the way that I solved this initially was to actually go and build a Visio diagram to go and document how every query flowed from one thing into another. And that was helpful, but still wasn't perfect. And that's where the Query Sleuth originally came from. So I'm going to go and hit on Query Sleuth for this particular model, and you'll notice that there's actually quite a few things that are going on in this. We've got a bunch of tables that are loaded to the data model. We have some that are loaded to worksheets here, and we have a whole bunch of them that are listed as connection only. And here's the tricky part with this is that some of these got quite complex. If you go and take a look at calendar, for example, you can see that there's only 3 queries that led through the calendar chain. Not a big deal. However, when we got into forecast, things got quite complicated here. There's a lot of things that ended up feeding into the forecast query. And some of them were short, some of them were very, very long. This one's not so bad, but you can see there's a lot of data manipulation and transformation that had to go through in order to make this work. Now, for reference here, I wasn't making light edits to the queries in this particular case. These were far too complex. We unfortunately don't have IntelliSense in the window, and even if I wanted to code it by hand, that would have been kind of hard. I wanted to be able to use the user interface, but I still needed to understand what the relationship chain actually looked like. So this is where we actually built this up to be able to trace these things. So if I needed to make a modification to forecast and I was trying to figure out, where did things come from, I could double click on this, walk my way through the chain and say, oh, okay, so the decline in costs here, this is one of the queries, that is the one that I need to actually go and talk to. So that's a little bit helpful because I could see what was in it by reading the M code. But this also gave me another ability working with this query editor. And that is that not only can I trace dependence, but I can flip this in the other direction to trace just the dependence of these individual queries as well. So we can see in this case here, categories doesn't have any dependence here. There's nothing on the chain, but calendar actually got referenced by a couple of other things. So it was used in this one here in order to go and actually find something. So here's the calendar table. You can see way down in the custom 1 step. So I could figure out, even though a query loaded to the data model, that it was also still called for somewhere else. And that became really, really useful because if I needed to say, go and actually modify something in the decline in cost query, I could then go and say, oh, wow, this one actually goes and deals with a whole lot of stuff. I've got to be really, really careful with it. So that was really useful. But we also got one other little ability from this that I didn't really count on when I first built it, and that is this ability to filter to endpoints only. And if you click on this, it actually shows you something really, really interesting. This goes and shows where everything starts because we're only pulling the endpoints and don't want to grab the stuff that is the far end of the chain, which is loading to the data model. So I can see very quickly here that everything has started from a connection-only query. That's a good thing. I'm happy with that. But check this out. When I flip this into precedence mode, it shows me the things that have been loaded to the data model. It also shows me the things that have been loaded to worksheet with their full chain of steps that go through them. So that's good. But what about these ones? Why do I have endpoints that load to connection only? And the answer on this one is that these queries here actually aren't used. They're not referenced by another query. They're not loaded to the data model. They're not loaded to a table, and they're not loaded to a combination of the data model and tables either. These queries can actually be deleted. Now their precedents may be an entirely different story, but these ones themselves can actually go away if I want to trim out my model. Now we have other ways in Monkey Tools to be able to identify these as well, but this is one of those abilities you have with the Query Sleuth to be able to go and flip this with precedence, endpoints only, to just show the items that aren't loading anywhere. Now typically, I'll be honest, I run with all of my queries showing. I don't just restrict it to endpoints because I want to be able to see what's going on and be able to click on any single one of them no matter where they are in the chain. But like I say, it's just a helpful little feature that you can use when you're working through the Query Sleuth to understand how your workbook's queries fit together. Thanks for watching this episode of Using Monkey Tools. To get your own monkey, visit our website at monkeytools.ca. Or if you subscribe to Skillwave's Self-Service Business Intelligence Academy, you'll get a free annual pro license included with your subscription. And remember, Monkey Tools was developed to support better Excel and Power BI solutions. If you want to learn how to really master these tools, you should definitely check out our full course catalog at skillwave.training.